Hi, my name is Diana. I'm the host of the Meeting Room podcast. Today we have a conversation with Andrey Schetina, the delivery manager in DevPro, and we're going to discuss how the management role has shifted over the years and whether the coaching mindset can help us in team management. Let's start. Hi, Andrey. So excited to have our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
And before we start all this coaching mindset discussion, I'd really love to hear about the project you're working on, the team composition, just the highlights. Could you please share that?
Sure. I guess for the past 6 or maybe even 7 years, I'm working in a restaurant industry domain. So we are developing one of the best in the world first-class applications, point of sale, that is essentially changing the world as we speak. Because we help numerous businesses to serve customers daily, do this fast, convenient, and essentially integrating all the possible high tech as we have right now in the world, like in the very next day. As for the team composition, well, it was changing for all these years, and it sometimes started from the team, I guess, of 5 or 7 developers. It was years ago, I do not recall, so sorry for those guys who were in the team at that moment. And then it was all up to 100 people all across the globe, and at the moment we're settled somewhere around 40 developers for that project, like specifically. That's not all the projects I work on, but that's maybe the main one that is in my heart and is the majority of my daily routine.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. And you mentioned that you work with people from all across the globe. Maybe you can name how many countries that involves?
It was just a couple countries, let's say 2 years ago. But then with COVID, with all the war in Ukraine, now I can safely name a couple Latin countries like Brazil, like Colombia, numerous countries in Europe. We have contractors in United Kingdom, we have contractors in Poland, we have contractors in Bulgaria, we have contractors, name a country in Europe and we'll probably have somebody there. And even feel like we had a couple in Asia, like Kazakhstan and all the rest. So it's pretty widespread. And it's if we're talking about the guys who are directly working in our project, if we're talking about all the contractors that work for our customer and the people whom we interact with, that will even circle the globe, because we have people in China, we have people in India, we have, name a country, we'll probably have someone there.
Yeah, that's cool. So lots of cross-cultural communication, I believe.
And challenges.
Yeah, for sure. And since you have so many years of experience working in that domain, I know that you worked both offline and online, and obviously a lot have happened in the past years. You just mentioned it, the COVID and the war. And looking from your perspective, did it influence relationships between team members in any way? And do you see these changes as a positive thing?
Changes to a positive meaning that we go remote? What are the changes that you're referencing as a positive?
The way the relationship changes.
Oh, that's a complicated question, because that's a good one, actually. I will always refer to the offline times as good old times, because as a company, we were located in the best office in the world, like the FTNT Institute, and it was, I would say, per feelings, something like a dorm, like the university dormitory. And that's just a huge hallway with dozens of rooms. And let's say my team at that moment was occupying 5 or 6 rooms, and we were occupying essentially just a part of the building. And it was priceless to just be able to go, walk several meters and reach to any person from your team you need to, have some chat, small talk, and so on and so forth, and even more, have those wonderful water-cooler conversations in the kitchen or in the hallway. We actually had a habit of just sitting in the hallway and discussing something. And as a part of this habit, we actually even requested our dearest office management team to make us just a painted wall, the white paint that was supportive to the whiteboard markers. and we were sketching some code fragments or ideas or schemas just on the wall. Well, the downside of that was that the paint was not really good, so some of the ideas are still there on the wall. And that was good old times. Currently, the other times. And I cannot name them as, negative or bad or like in any fashion worst, because they just open different opportunities for us. For example, we're able to work with people like all across the globe. So we're open for the top talent. We're no longer limited by the location. We can acquire any specialist, any talent that we need at the current moment. So essentially, if we will look from that angle, like from that perspective, that makes us stronger, better, and so on and so forth. But the downside that team buildings are not that fun. Like when you're doing anything online, that's like really not something that we had before. That's not the only like benefit in the downside, that's just something on the surface. So both times have something good.
Yeah, that's true. It's never the same, but office times will always have this nostalgic vibe. But at the same time, as that changed, also the role of the manager, I believe, also shifted. And you definitely should have had some challenges that you had to overcome. And, just the vision of who you are as a manager could have changed a bit. Would you say that happened?
Sure. It was different, lately in the offline times, because just not judging by myself, but rather judging around all the topic of manager becoming not the offline role model, like the person who you see every day, the person who leads all the meetings offline and so on and so forth. It changed. Because just from my own observation, managers even dressed differently. Especially those who were taken or having the positions like of the, let's say, middle management, closer to the higher management. They had like larger accounts or projects. Their dress code was it was more strict, let's say. So the larger your team, the more strict you look like, the more official you look like, and the more raffinated you sound. Like you no longer, joking in some fashion, and you would stick to more formal things. You would behave in a way that the role model should behave. And that was a thing back in the day, because people tend to not only judge you by something that you talk or say to them, they judge you by the variety of factors. The way you look, the way you stay, the way you just interact with them in all the fashions. Now it's all cut up by the zoom filter and the background and so on and so forth. So it's no longer something that is considered. And that means that managers should look for other ways to, I do not want to say influence people, but rather build some relationship with them. So yes, we had to be more creative to let people trust us, to let people understand our role, to let people actually let us make them more productive or more developed, let's say.
And can you give some examples of such ways?
I will definitely try. I can say that a part of the soft transformation from the role model of like the offline PM to the online PM, the decision-making process changed a lot. Because back in the day, it was sort of a trend that manager should be, let's say, a sharp figure, the one who takes decisions, the brave leader that is always in front, that leads the team somewhere and so on and so forth. And yes, some of the soft skills were there. We were more leading rather than directing at that point, but still, we were the decision makers most often. Right now, I guess we will talk more about like some of the surrounding skills later, but right now, manager is more like a person who is facilitating decisions rather than making them. And that's one of the essential tools, because if there is only a single person talking on the meeting, that's not a meeting, that's a concert or something like this. And we change the way we talk, we change the way we interact, we change the way we try to acquire attention, we change the way we enable the mutual work or something like this. So that would be maybe one of the tools. Do not take decisions. Facilitate those and empower your people to take those decisions and raise a hand. Another thing that probably will be important in this matter is the information management. Again, back in the day, PM was a sort of truth and source of information, and PM was the only point of contact that was always aware about anything that is ongoing everywhere. And that is why PM was the only guy who was able to take the decision, because he was or she was well informed. At the moment, it's no longer a thing, because when you're in the office, your work schedule is pretty much defined and people may expect you to be there at the time. Now, let's be honest, people are more flexible about their time, and it's not always possible to reach out to somebody when you need person. There will be, a gap of 10, 15 minutes or 30 minutes or even more, and you need more people who will be able to take decisions or facilitate decisions or get decisions from somebody. So sharing more information is something that you need to do as an online PM to keep your team well informed about what is happening, to keep them engaged, to keep them responsible and accountable for certain decisions that they now can do and take. So I feel that this is important and essential thing of the current times.
Yeah, as I said, definitely some great advices.
Yeah, I have just one more consequence out of this thought. Just maybe the conclusion and consequence of two things that I've shared would be one simple thing. As a manager, stop thinking that you're the only person who actually knows how. You're no longer that person. You probably should not have been that person in the first place, but now even more. Trust your people, empower your people, and share as much information as you can so that your people will be qualified to take those decisions properly. That's it.
That's cool, and that's how we gradually came to the topic of the coaching mindset in team management. And more and more companies seem to adopt it. And just before we start diving in, I would like you to share your vision of what the coaching mindset actually means, especially in the IT industry.
Okay, but I feel like you will not like my response to this.
Let's try.
Yeah, let's start from the side of it. What the coaching mindset is. Imagine you would Google coaching mindset, what you will read and find. You will read some interesting explanations and so on and so forth, and then you will want to go to look what are some, key things that will help you understand that, yes, you are using coaching mindset. And you will find some tooling around that, and what that tools would be. You will probably name something like active listening, asking follow-up questions, providing feedback, empowering team members, and so on and so forth. So now tell me, which of these things are something net new?
Not much. I would say not at all, yeah.
I would say none. And in fact, yes, none of these things are actually net new. And our industry, it's just something we were doing for past, I will tell you maybe 10 years from my perspective, because let's say my experience is bounded by 10 plus years. But if you would interview somebody, let's say more experienced with 25 years in industry or in communication, that person will tell you that that's not new for 25 years. So what's the coaching mindset? I would say coaching mindset is something that will help some consulting companies to earn more money when they will be consulting people on how to do coaching mindset. But in my perspective, that is just a term that was injected as a collection of all the good habits that we were developing over time in the industry, just in the business society, in the team management specifically. So what it means? It means doing a proper team and project management. For me, it's as simple as that.
Okay, I hear you, but at the same time, I personally know some companies that still have this more of a traditional approach to just managing teams that includes the micromanagement and given directions, and we can just call it a bad management that just needs some improvement. And maybe that's one of the ways why the coaching mindset was and is at the table at the moment. But still, I believe there's something about it that helps people to discover, their own solutions and find answers and find some insights. And everything is changes and nothing changes at the same time. Maybe it's not only about, as you said, just this marketing sales thing, but maybe it's something about that's becoming global, like a trend that we had to adopt because everything is changing, like the flexibility, the remote work, etc., etc.
Sure. I feel like we will now connect some of the dots, because we will be looking into that topic from our sphere, like the software development and so on and so forth. And our industry, at some point in past, decided that waterfall methodologies are no longer cool, and there another trend started, agile. And all that is interconnected with agile. And what was the key change from waterfall to the agile? It's not about we will not plan up front, or we will not have specific schedules or the detailed work breakdown structures. It's not about it. It's about the fact that teams are performing better if they have some flexibility. Teams are performing better if they have not too strict roles, definitions, and responsibilities, if they can interchange in their roles, if they can take some of the responsibilities at some moment and overtake them from the other roles, and just be more flexible. And that is what agile actually means. Like, it's not straight, it's not strict, it's agile. And with this change, when the software industry started to reinvent the way on how to deliver the working software, how to deliver it faster, or how to develop it just in another way, it heavily changed the interaction between people, because they no longer were discussing just the dates on how to and so on and so forth. They started to discuss value. Should we do that right now? Should we do something else? Can we approach it from the different angle? And more kind of these conversations started to evolve. Like, people started to really focus on value, and to focus on value you need, going back, more information. If you have more information, you're more capable of taking more complicated decisions, or higher of your level, maybe a couple levels higher of your level. And that all started to essentially transform the role of, software engineers, but plain software engineers, into the engineers like we, like them to be today. Software engineer must be communicative, must be able to troubleshoot some production issues, should be at the same time able to go to some of the sales call and present fancy deck of 30 slides with different statistics, quotes from the famous people and so on and so forth, and sell your project for a couple $1 million. And at the same time, the next hour, go provide some architectural advices elsewhere. Like, yes, that's a reality. That's how modern software development works. And that's not about only software engineers. We just expect the same from QAs, we expect the same from the project managers. It's totally okay for now to expect that project manager can be overtaking some of the roles of the team. And even more, we can expect a project manager not present in the process at all. Let's say some of the frameworks of the Agile, they just do not have a project management role. They have Scrum Masters, for example, for Scrum. They have some other roles that do not directly require them to take decisions or do any sort of management. So that is what's changing, and that is something that is a basis of that coaching mindset being in trends right now. Because, as we already discussed, it's just a compilation of good habits, good practices, and good tools around the communication in the first place, because now we're not in the same room. We need to communicate more efficiently, because we no longer able to have those small talks, just to visit another office for 2 minutes and chat about it. We need to be more efficient. We need to spend time efficiently. We need to understand how our communication essentially implies the results of our work. And that is why we need to use all those things like active listening and asking questions, because you no longer taking decisions, you're facilitating those, and you can facilitate the decision only by asking questions. And if you're good enough, you will be asking the questions that will facilitate the decision that you want. And that would be another way to empower the person to take a decision that you agree with upfront. And again, maybe software developers in case will not like me for these words, but yes, that is something that we do as well on a daily basis, just to empower the person of taking any other subsequent decisions that we as managers probably will not be capable of taking. So a sort of a training. I guess that was too long for the reply.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. And I totally agree. I just have one question in mind. Obviously, you talked from the IT perspective, but do you believe that not all companies may need such a mindset that includes all the skills, especially communication ones that you named?
For sure. Even more, I would say that not all the people will be willing to work in such an environment, because we're different, just as people. And yes, it is trending right now to be totally extroversive, totally open, stream your life across all the social platforms, be a speaker on all the conferences, provide coaching to some of your friends or colleagues, or just sell your coaching on the internet and do all these sort of things. But yet we're not all the same. Personally, I would prefer quiet evening with nobody around me, because I'm deeply introversive person. And I can say that some of the things that I had to do for my professional career and so on and so forth, I do this not because I am the guy who prefers these sort of things. That's just something I understand I have to do in order to be productive in my role. And saying that, we are different, and there are definitely people who would prefer doing something by the instruction or not taking the responsibility, keep their mind fresh and open. And there are companies that just doing some sample routines. For example, if we're not talking about the project management, but we're talking about the operational management. Let's say we have a factory that produces, best candies in the world. They're doing pretty much the same every day. You do not need these fancy tools as employees empowerment and so on and so forth. You need, resources that will be delivering best-in-class routine work, 8 hours a day, probably more, and that's that. If you are good enough in nature, you will find individuals that will enjoy it. And that will be totally fine to work without all this coaching mindsets, retrospectives, stand-ups, and so on and so forth. Just do your best in the world candies every day.
Yeah, it just feels like an approach for a certain targeted audience who can actually benefit from it and help client to benefit from it as well.
I tell you what, that I am really passionate about the idea that modern world with its trends and all the shiny bells and whistles around it are creating the artificial image of something that is important, and therefore causing a lot of people trying to reach something that is trending and good while they're actually harming themselves. So essentially that means that it is not cool to work in the candy factory, even though you can make fair amount of money there, and you will do something that is useful, that is okay. And it's not popular just because it is popular to do something meaningful, valuable, and again, do something that will be interesting to the whole world and so on and so forth. That's a sort of a misconception. Let's say in our country, at some point it was very, very popular to be either a lawyer or the economist.
Or the doctor.
So I cannot say anything bad about the doctors, because I personally feel like we have quite good medicine, quite good healthcare in our country. But being a lawyer when you're, let's say, grown up in some country who you have good understanding of what the land is, what cultures use on your soil and so on and so forth, and you're going to take the doctorate and being a lawyer just because. Not because you like it, not because you want it, but just because. And the same thing is happening in the IT world, the same thing is happening all across the board. We kind of took a little bit of side road to that question.
Yeah, a little bit, but I would still like to elaborate on that. And I agree that there might be even some misconception of what meaningful and valuable is, because it's completely different for every person. And what I believe in that really not every person needs to do meaningful job or find his passion or just live his best life, because it's such a different thing for everyone. I thought in the IT world, even if that happens, right now we move into the next hot trend that also may have a great idea in mind, but maybe a little bit misunderstood by many people. And I'm talking about diversity and inclusivity. What is your opinion on that?
I am again may sound controversial, because I don't know, I just think about all this stuff this way. It is important, by no means. It is something that our world was waiting for and our world required. But again, we're people and we tend to screw up some things. So the topic around diversity and inclusivity, to my knowledge, is being screwed up all across the world and the board. Because we do not focus on what matters. Again, we are focused on what is popular in Instagram and TikTok. And a lot of the actions that are taken on the span of diversity and inclusivity are taken not because of the goal, but rather because of the hype it has at the moment. And it is observed all across the board and all across the world. And that is why I have controversial feelings around this topic. And I guess we can talk a lot about some specifics if you're interested.
Well, just let's dive deeper into one of the specifics that touches the cross-cultural communication and the way you build relationship in your team, for example. Because I understand from what you're saying, you do not have diversity and inclusion goals, you do not measure success, any of that, right?
I actually have a problem with diversity metrics, so-called. Because I find it totally ridiculous practice to set a goal like this quarter we need to hire X% of, people of certain group. So what does it mean? If you're setting this kind of goal, it means that you're actually being aggressive towards all the other groups of people. Because this small quota and percentage is closed for them. Isn't that something that is not about diversity and inclusivity? That is something that I really don't like about the approach of having that quotas, percentages, and so on and so forth. Even more, trying to access performance of some specific groups. Even more, I'm really against dividing people into groups, because essentially we're all people, we have 2 hands, 2 legs. If you was not involved in any carpentry or something like that, you probably have 10 fingers, and so on and so forth. So it really, I can even say, it pisses me off when the subject is being discussed in that angle. When we're dividing people into groups, when we are trying to access and determine that some of the group should be better in something or something not, or vice versa, that we're just setting some metrics because it is trending in the market with no goal behind that. To me, one and only goal should be that if the person is skilled enough to do the work that you have, that person should be hired. With no exceptions to gender, race, personal preferences, or anything else. It's all about skills. You're either capable or not capable. You're either worth hiring on that position or not. And to me, it all should be saved like this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the metrics and the division, because it basically what ruins the whole idea of diversity and the term itself. But about what you said, that it needs to be just about the skills. Basically, it is what inclusivity also includes, but how do you make sure that you hire based on skills only? like unconscious biases, they still exist, and there is still human factor. How do you make sure that you hire, the right professional, and that's all you're looking at?
First of all, I would agree with you about the unconscious biases, because that is the topic that I find truly interesting, important. Because even I was a person who thought that I have no biases, like conscious or unconscious. I am the guy who always takes right decisions, so on and so forth. But it only takes you to question yourself. It only takes you to, let's say, open another position to hire somebody and start reviewing the CVs from the market and question yourself, how do you take certain decisions? So just from the self-analysis, I can tell you that everybody of us has unconscious biases. That is why they call them conscious. And I can even say that every one of us will have them till the end of their life. And the question is, do we really understand ourselves? Do we really feel ourselves? Are we brave enough to question ourselves about any other decision that we make? And are we brave enough to go and argue ourselves about these decisions? And that would be the response to your question. The only way to hire a proper specialist with the proper skills that will be capable of solving whatever task you have for this position and be honest is to be honest with yourself, to question yourself, and to probably master the skill of understanding your own biases that you have towards either group of people or anything else. So that would be the only way. You need to be honest to yourself, and you need to be focused on actually solving some of your tasks on the work. Let's say you have a task and it should be solved, no matter who will do that.
Yeah, those are some truly powerful questions, and I think that we all should reflect on them sometime. That's how I believe we can just end our conversation. It was a really big pleasure to talk to you. It was insightful, and I loved your vision. I really loved how you just look at things, and thank you just for sharing your honest opinion about everything we've talked about.
Thanks, it was nice talking to you. Anytime.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Do not forget to hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more episodes coming soon.